Hey guys, and welcome back to another video. In today's video, we're going to be talking about something a little bit different, something that has been all over the news in the investing world recently, and that is the idea of government officials, such as in this case, Nanci Pelosi and her stock trading. The most recent reason why we have seen headlines like that last one that you just saw coming out is because of trades like this that are going so well that some people might even find it a little bit suspicious as to how they know when to buy in and when to sell out. You can see that back in late November of 2023, Nanci Pelosi bought a whole bunch of call options for NVIDIA stock. And for those of you who follow the stock market, you know that that is doing really well. Now, they've estimated that she has made around $1.4 million since buying that stock back in November, those call options back in November. And a lot of people are upset about it. However, some people have just chosen to follow it. You can see that there's actually a Twitter or an X account called Pelosi Tracker that tracks the stocks that she's been buying and shares that with an audience. Once again, though, a lot of people are not very happy with this. You can see that even the owner of the Twitter, his name is Joseph, and he says that from an ethical perspective, this is not okay for politicians to be trading individual stocks. And I would imagine that his argument would be because they control the policies that a lot of these companies rely on, and they could have access to some sort of insider information that once again would help them to time the market out a little bit. Another example provided by this same Twitter user, you can see that this Senator Markwayne Mullin purchased $30,000 of BMI, which is a producer of automated water meter technology. And then the EPA recently passed a mandatory requirement for utilities to upgrade to that newer water automated system. And that same Senator Markwayne Mullin just so happens to sit on some sort of environmental committee in the Senate. Now, obviously, these two aren't the only Senate or House members that own stocks. You can see that from a survey in 2021, 284 members of Congress own stock, which is right around 53%, and another 40% only own widely held investment funds, things like ETFs that couldn't be manipulated quite as easily. Now, the reason that we actually know all of this is because of the Stock Act of 2012, which was designed to eliminate insider trading within these Congress members. The first thing that it did was, again, reiterate the fact that these members should not be using any sort of non-public information in order to turn a profit on their stocks, but it also required that within 45 days of making a trade on the stock market, they are required to report that and to make it public information. If you're curious, it did actually do a few other things if we go ahead and scroll down, including banning them from having any sort of special access to IPOs. This was something that would have been especially prevalent in 2020 when so many stocks were IPOing, so it kept them away from getting any sort of special treatment when it comes to getting early access to stocks that are hitting the market soon. Now, the second that all of this information becomes public, that means that everyone has access to it. And this website right here called capitaltrades.com actually tracks all of it for us and puts it into a nice little list so we can go ahead and have a look at all of the different government officials and what they've been trading recently. Now, these top two trades are Nanci Pelosi's most recent trade and something that we'll talk about in just a second because it drew even more attention to the recent success of government officials trading stocks. But you can see that it's not just her. There's plenty of other government officials doing lots of stock trading, including Michael McCall, who apparently has a lot of time on his hand because he is all over this list. He is a very active investor. I guess in his case, it is his spouse doing the actual purchasing or owning the stock. You can see that it tells you that right here, that the owner is the spouse or the actual government official themselves. But a lot of times it's going to be with the same information. So let's go ahead and have a look at Nanci Pelosi's most recent purchases and how that sort of turned out for her with the actual stock market. You can see that she first bought the Palo Alto Networks warrants on the 12th of February. At the time, the price was around $372. You can see that she actually whiffed on that one a little bit, and it went down to $261 just a couple days later. But you might have seen that the next time she purchased some was on the 21st of February, which was on that low day of $262. So she has already turned a very nice profit on those warrants, most likely. You can see that people have already started to catch on to this a little bit. When she bought those warrants for Palo Alto Network, they went up as much as 10% in the day and ended that session up 7% with no real other news other than the fact that she had been purchasing it. Now, a lot of people have been taking note and taking advantage of this information with the government officials making their trades public, but you can see that someone actually decided that they were going to make an ETF based off of this publicized information. Back in early 2023, Submersive Capital decided that they were going to make two ETFs, one of them that tracks the Democratic Party and one of them that tracks the Republican Party, with NANC being for the Democratic Party and Nancy Pelosi, and KRUZ being for Senator Ted Cruz of the Republican Party. So as you might expect, these two ETFs are going to be managing their funds based on the public filings enforced by the Stock Act. You can see, however, that the ETF charges a 1% fee, which is a whole bunch higher than a lot of other ETFs, but I figured it would be interesting to see how they'd been performing. First, we'll go ahead and have a look at the NANC ETF, which tracks the Democratic Party. In the past year, this is up almost 40%, and that is a pretty hefty gain. Moving on to KRUZ, this is up 18% in the past year, which is still a very nice return. But you'll see when we go ahead and compare these to something like the NASDAQ, it's probably not worth investing into these ETFs, especially with their high 1% fee that you're going to be paying yearly. The NASDAQ in the past 1 year is up 40%, so it beats both of those funds, and likely if you bought an ETF for this, you'd be paying a fee that is near 0%. And when you go ahead and compare it to the S&P 500, that's up 30% in the past year. Once again, you would probably pay maybe a 0.03% fee or something like that in an S&P 500 ETF, and it might be a lot more reliable. So I wouldn't necessarily suggest investing in those ETFs, but it is interesting to have a look at them and consider the ideas of following with those congressmen that could have some sort of information. I hope you did go on to enjoy today's video and found it interesting. I know this is a little bit different than our normal videos, but I thought this information was both prevalent and relevant, so I would put this out and you might learn something new. Go ahead and leave any comments. If you have any thoughts or questions, leave that down below, and subscribe so you don't miss any more videos. But other than that, we'll see you in the next one.